when it comes to actually retiring, is not working something that actually works? Like, does purpose happen?
Retirement is different for everybody. I don't think we realize what retirement is going to look like. I mean, I've worked every day since I was 14 years old. So me imagining what it's like not to have a job and not go to work is really kind of strange to me.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Guiding You Forward podcast presented by Mountain America Credit Union, where we talk about all things financial related. And today is no exception because we have Monica Henson with us. Hi, Monica.
Hi, Kristen Lena. How are you today?
So good, so good. And so you all know, Monica is a sales manager at Mountain America Investment Services. Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay, perfect.
You did.
So we're going to talk about retirement with Monica, and she has all the answers.
Let's hope. I don't know. I don't know about that.
She does. But you guys hit that notification bell, subscribe to our channel so you can get all of our future Guiding You Forward content. But we're just going to hop right in, Monica.
Yeah.
When it comes to planning retirement, what do we really need to be thinking about?
Yeah. I would say when you're thinking about retirement, first of all, I would say retirement is different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So what might be my idea of retirement is probably something totally different to you. So I would say sit down with your significant other, put a plan in place, and kind of craft what do you see yourself doing in retirement? Are you traveling? Are you at home with exploring hobbies, things like that? But I think you need to first have your plan in place about defining exactly what you want to be doing in retirement.
I love that you said that because my parents are, recently retired within the last, 5 or 6 years. And I always thought, oh, my parents are going to travel the world when they retire, and I have a brother that lives in Europe. So they've done a little bit of that, right? Just to go see grandkids.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's not what they're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So understanding what that looks like.
Yeah. And you would be really surprised at how couples aren't synced up in that regard, right?
Okay.
So I think about myself and my husband and we're getting, closer to retirement. And so we're now starting to sort of have this conversation about what that looks like. And his idea is a little different than my idea, right?
Sure.
And so coming together and having those conversations about what do we want to be doing in retirement? Are we going to stay in our home? Are we going to sell our home and downsize and travel? Or, what does that look like? Are we going to move to a city closer to kids or things like that? And oftentimes couples don't have those conversations. So it's a really easy thing to do is just sit down and say, what do you want to do in your retirement? What does that look like for you? And our financial advisors can help kind of steer some of that by asking some good questions to pull that out, because sometimes people don't know.
Yeah.
And it sneaks up on you a lot faster than you anticipate, for sure. So, having that plan is really critical.
So Monica, let's say I have defined what I want to do in retirement with my spouse, right? Let's say we do want to travel the world, because I feel like that is sometimes just, oh, you're going to retire, you're going to travel and do all these things. I don't know that that's realistic for everyone.
Yeah.
But let's just, for purpose's sake, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
What's my next step? I know I want to do this. What do I need to do next?
You want to make sure you have the money available to, reach your goal, right? So if it's traveling the world, obviously, you need to also decide how much money am I going to need to stash away for that? So I would say cut your expenses, pay off whatever debt you can. Obviously, you don't want to have a lot of debt when you retire. That's, the goal is to have just a lot of savings in place. So whatever you can start to do now to save is critical. So take advantage of your 401k plan. If you're working for a company that has a company match, always, really take advantage of that company match. And if you're 50 and older, you can then put more into your 401k plan and kind of ramp that up. So just take advantage of those programs that are out there so you can have the savings in place.
Okay.
Because, and you'll want to sit down and say, where are we going to travel? What does this cost look like? I mean, run some scenarios, put together a spreadsheet if you want and really have an idea of what that's going to look like. And you're also going to want to plan for those unexpected expenses that happen. And people forget that all the time.
Yes.
Even if you're thinking, okay, we want to travel, what are those other expenses as far as health care, as you're getting older, and, you want to make sure you've got money set aside to make sure you're able to pay for those things in addition to the goals you want to do as far as traveling.
Yeah, I love that. One question I have too, just kind of going off of that healthcare, right?
Yeah.
Because I would love to think by the time I'm ready to retire, I'm going to be able to travel the world. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I look at my parents, which I love you, mom and dad, but it's harder for them to get around.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest, right?
Yeah.
They're older now.
Yeah.
So when it comes to healthcare, what do you suggest? Are there different strategies or plans that we need to be following as we kind of plan for, hey, my health may not be what I want it to be in that retirement age? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And people are living longer, right?
Yes.
And so as we, look at your family history, if you've got parents that are living into their, 80s, 90s, that's going to look a little different for you than it's going to look like for someone else. That maybe doesn't have that family history of longevity. And so you do have to think, okay, retirement homes are really, really, really expensive. And so do you plan for a long-term care plan, to have that in place? What are you going to move in with family? What does that look like? Again, it's making sure you have those discussions. And I'll share this with you. So my mother is in her 80s and she's doing fantastic. She's healthy. She's doing, really well, but she's in a big home and she's up and down stairs and things like that. And so we're having family conversations, and it's really, a conversation people don't like to have because you're talking about mortality. You're talking about things that, you don't want to think about your parents passing away.
No.
No one wants to bring it up. If we don't talk about it, it's not going to happen, kind of a thing, right?
Yes.
And that's not the case. I mean, you need to have frank, open conversations with parents. You need to look at your own family history. You need to decide, what does that look like? And how is that going to derail some of the plans and dreams and things that we have in place? And, and you're going to have to adjust and pivot.
Yeah.
For those things.
So that's awesome that we're thinking about longevity, having those frank conversations with our family members that none of us want to have. And what really are some other strategies for actually saving for healthcare specifically? Yeah.
You do want to have a nest egg built up, for sure. Medicare will be there, but it doesn't cover everything. So if you think about Medicare, a lot of people rely on Medicare and they think, oh gosh, I'm going to get this, medical plan that's going to take care of things, but it doesn't cover a lot of things. So you do have to look at options like a supplemental health care plan that goes along with your Medicare. Social Security is a really hot topic right now. If you're thinking about money that you're going to have available, they're saying Social Security is going to phase out at some point. And so, people rely on that to get them through retirement, and it's just not going to cut it anymore. So you have to have that supplemental income set aside through, your investments, your 401k plan, your long-term care plan, and do your homework and see what that's where that's going to run you.
Okay. Because we're going to have these additional healthcare expenses.
Yeah.
Right.
People live longer. Yeah. And if you're going to be in any level of an assisted living facility, you've really got to plan for that. An assisted living facility can run up to like $4,000 a month.
Oh, good grief.
For someone to be in assisted living. That's just assisted living. That's not a nursing home. That's almost a double amount.
Wow.
So if you think about those numbers and put those into perspective, you really do have to have money set aside for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back a little bit to one thing that you mentioned earlier was in retirement, we don't want to have as much debt.
Right.
Because our fixed income, we want to be able to use it, right, the way we need to, not necessarily on paying off debt. So when it comes to, let's say people that are just starting to think about retirement, I think, mid-30s is when we're like, oh my gosh, I really got to start thinking about this a little more seriously. My 20s are over.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Do we focus more on paying off debt or savings, or does one come before the other, or is that the chicken before the egg?
I think there's a place for both. I mean, I think there's sometimes where we have to utilize debt to kind of start off in life and things like that. But you certainly don't want to be so heavily indebted that you're not able to save. So I would say pay off what you can. Credit cards, if you're paying a 15% interest rate on a credit card and you pay that off, you've just given yourself a 15%, sort of like investment earnings that you would have, been able to get. That's just a full on savings.
Yeah.
And so if you can, pay off the smaller debts first, pay off high interest rates first whenever you're looking at paying off debt. A lot of people going into retirement want to have their home paid off.
Yeah.
So, look at paying maybe extra payments or paying more into principal or, making sure that you're not, making sure you're putting more into that mortgage payment than you're, maybe instead of spending money on a new car, put that onto your mortgage.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So there's room for both. There's room for savings. There's room for debt and still having a retirement plan.
Yeah. But you really don't want to have a lot of debt going into retirement. And that's really hard for people when that happens because then, they're still paying on homes and they're still paying on maybe a vehicle loan and things like that. And that's when your income is really going to be reduced.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. One question that I have is for those of us that are nearing retirement, what are the things that we really need to start thinking about? Obviously, aside from what does our plan look like? What do we really want to do?
Yeah. Well, you want to look at just things like that. Like where's your debt at? I would say take it for a test drive. So put a budget in place, right? And cut whatever expenses you can out of your current situation.
Yeah.
Maybe reduce some things, really have some open and honest conversations with the people in your life and then stick with it. And I would say just maybe try a 6-month test run and see how that feels. And then you can make some adjustments and, you can pivot around. And if you need to reevaluate your budget, you can. But a budget is really critical to follow.
Oh my goodness. I don't know about all of you that watch our segments, but a budget comes up every time.
Yeah.
It really does.
And I'm not the best at that. I think people, it's really easy to just want to go and have that immediate gratification of a purchase, for example.
Yes.
Without realizing that if you're paying interest on a purchase, you're actually paying a lot more for something, than if you would have just saved for it and just bought it without paying an interest payment on top of it.
Yeah, I love to look at it that way. That helps align our spending a lot, right?
Yeah.
So aside from, making sure that we've got all of those things in place, what else do we need to think about as we're nearing retirement?
I think, and I can relate to this because I'm getting a little nearer to the retirement. It's actually at the lights at the end of the tunnel for me. So things I think about are, again, what does that look like and how am I going to get there? You've got to have the conversations with your family and have the plan in place. I would say look at estate planning. Is always really good. We have estate planners that our advisors can refer our clients to that can help them put together an estate planning or a will. Have those things in place because you just, that's a stressful thing that you don't want hanging over your head. Yeah. And especially I'm thinking about my scenario. We've got a blended family. It's another marriage. We've got, kids from both marriages that we had prior. And things get complicated.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to have estate planning in place, a will in place, so that you that's off the table. Talk to your kids about it. We did an estate plan just recently and talked to our children about it and said, here's what's going on with our estate plan, how we want things divided out, when we pass. And you don't, again, those are uncomfortable conversations because you're talking about your mortality.
Yes.
Right? No one wants to talk about their mortality.
No, we don't.
So.
But I have learned, I feel like there's one thing we can all count on, right, in life, unfortunately, and we're going to die eventually.
Yeah, death and taxes.
Yeah. There you go, death and taxes.
Yeah.
Which brings up another good point, which is taxes.
Yeah.
Right? What do we need to be thinking about as we're nearing retirement when it comes to taxes?
Yeah, your tax situation is definitely going to change.
Yeah.
You're going to be earning less money once you retire. You won't have the income coming in, so your tax rate's going to go down a little bit. But you want to think about when you're pulling money out of those investment vehicles, so your IRA accounts, and which ones are affected by taxes. You want to make sure that you're just always thinking about the bigger picture as it relates to taxes. I would say sit down with a tax CPA and say, let's walk through what this looks like futuristically and put a plan in place, and they can help you do that.
Okay. One question I have, going back to, you mentioned create your budget and take it for a test drive for 6 months. Have you ever had clients or friends or family that have done that and they're like, hold up, press the brakes, this isn't working?
Oh, yeah. I think it happens all the time. I mean, I don't think we realize what retirement is going to look like. I've worked every day since I was 14 years old in my whole life. So me imagining what it's like not to have a job and not go to work is really kind of strange to me to think about. So I think people don't really understand, what that might look like in retirement. And we all have an idea of we all have the vision that it's going to be, I'm just going to retire and I'm going to travel and maybe, hang out with grandkids. And, it's the picture that you see on TV, with the happy couple on a beach retiring. And that's not the case all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so taking it for a test drive and then having it not work is probably a great learning, right? So you can go back and reset.
Yeah.
And I say do it more than once. I mean, and go back and reset and just say, okay, we've got to cut more expenses, or, maybe the motor home we wanted to buy is too expensive, and maybe that's something we decide we don't want to do. I mean, just do a reset. But I think anyone who does that is going to find out that they're probably going to need to, kind of rebudget at that point.
Yeah. So another question I have for you, because you've worked with hundreds of people, right? Getting them ready for retirement, and you've probably seen a lot of successful retirements happen.
Yeah.
When it comes to actually retiring, right? I feel like you and I are probably on the same page here. I've worked every day in my life, I feel like, since I could walk, because Mom and Dad, you worked us to death. Like, good grief, right? It was just, they had more and more kids so that they could all put them to work, I feel like.
Yeah.
But it was good, right? But the thought of not working one day is just really hard for me.
Yeah.
As you've seen successful people retire, is that something that actually works? Just not working? Like, does purpose happen? And obviously you haven't been through it, but you've seen a lot of people.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think everybody's different when it comes to retiring. I'll use my dad as an example. My dad retired. He was in banking for, 37 years and had a great career and ended up retiring and, missed working. And so he went out on a consulting basis and did some, additional work just on a consulting basis because he just wanted that connection, So I think our jobs define us in a lot of ways, who we are. And just envisioning, like, what does that look like? And it's going to be different for everyone. Some people go back to work. Some people take up hobbies. I mean, I'm thinking about, hobbies are a great thing to do. Is, what do you want to do? My husband is thinking about writing a book, when he retires. And that's something that, he hasn't had time for, but is seriously thinking that might be a great, opportunity for him to eventually write a book that he wants to write. So I think everyone's different.
Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I love that, though. There's hope, right?
Yeah.
There's hope for retirement.
Yeah,
you guys.
yeah.
I love that.